Thank you, Melinda, for that very kind introduction. Let me thank yourself, Wayne, all of the partners here for really showing up and being here to address some of the major issues and problems that we're looking at and faced with in the tech industry as it relates to inclusion. But I'm really happy to be here because, you know what, you all are about the future and you're about solutions. And given the fact I just came back from Washington, D.C. late last night, you know what I'm dealing with there. So it's my first event of the weekend, and I've got many. And so it's really good to be inspired by so many people who care about the future and who care about finding solutions to the very serious problems which there are in the tech industry as it relates to inclusion. So for those of you not from the Bay Area, welcome to the Bay Area. I represent the East Bay, Oakland, Berkeley, Albany, Piedmont, Emeryville, Alameda, San Leandro. Of course, the most enlightened and most diverse district in the country, and right next to Silicon Valley. And so I know what these issues are as it relates to inclusion within the tech industry because, and I just have to share a few little stories with you. First of all, my constituents, I have a very wonderful, diverse, enlightened constituency, as I said, and for years and years and years, many people of color from my district have been trying, qualified people of color have been trying to get jobs, mind you, in the tech industry. But you know what, they come to my office, they say they can't even get in the door. That's right. Many years ago, African-American engineers had to file a lawsuit against some of the tech companies. And so this didn't just start, and this is historical, it's systemic, it's structural. And you're finally really being able to get to the bottom of it and to really break through some of those barriers and some of those structures. And that's what this, and some of those institutional policies that allow for this lack of inclusion to continue. So your work is more important than ever. These conferences really will actually change a lot of the culture of the tech industry as well as your daily work each and every day. Let me just take a moment to recognize Dr. Carr from the White House and just say how important this gathering is, because even the president sent someone out who's doing a phenomenal job. So just know what you're doing is so important. And Vivian just peeked around here with Bill. I just have to say, where's Vivian Stone? And we met each other, and to show you, and Vivian reminded me of this. Then it was affirmative action. This was in the 80s. I helped develop then was affirmative action plan for the State Bar of California, okay? That was about inclusion then in the 80s. And here we are still talking about inclusion. I mean, we should be past this by now. We should be past this. We should be past it. So it didn't just start today for me. It didn't just start today for Vivian. We've been at it a long time, but it's so wonderful to see so many young people who get it and who are taking the baton and rolling forward with it and running with it so that we won't, 20 years from now, say we're going to have to develop a strategy for inclusion in another industry. This should be it. This should be it. So let's get it right. A couple of things I want to mention. The Level Playing Institute. Level Playing Institute came out with a study showing that there will be 1.4 million new tech jobs by 2020, and estimated that 70%, mind you, 70% of those jobs are going to be unfilled, due to the rate U.S. universities are producing qualified graduates in the tech industry. And so we need to capitalize on these jobs while also ensuring that these opportunities are available to everyone. By bringing together leaders in education, entrepreneurship, and policy, you're really able to not only share the best practices, but to really uncover what some of the underlying issues are and also develop practical solutions. Now, there are single-digit percentages of African-American employees and Latinos in some of the biggest, fastest-growing tech companies in the world. And of course, many of them are right next door. This is an unacceptable, unfortunate standard. Of the 7 Silicon Valley companies that release their staffing numbers, on average, just 2% of technology workers are African-American and 3% are Latino. Now, that's a shame and disgrace. But last year, 4.5% of all new recipients of bachelor degrees in computer science and computer engineering were African American, and 6.5% were Latino. So top universities are turning out Black and Latino computer science and computer engineering graduates at twice the rate that the leading technology companies hire them. Twice the rate. So let's be clear, there's not a talent deficit. STEM education, there's not. Okay? It's not. There's an opportunity deficit. And yes, we want to continue to invest in STEM education and enhance that even more, especially with our young men of color, which Dr. Carr is working on. But we got to recognize that we have qualified people. We have qualified people who qualify for these jobs. So I'm glad to see some of these companies are doing their unconscious bias practices surveys and trying to develop strategies to make sure that sensitivity training, understanding of what is taking place within the subconscious mind is happening so that they can begin to, remove some of these barriers. And many of these jobs are non-tech jobs also. We have to remember that. A large percentage of jobs in the tech industry are non-tech. So very recently, I went to because I've been working on this, and Vivian knows, for many, many years. So I went to the Congressional Black Caucus this year and talked to the new chair, because he's very interested in Fortune 500 and board participation, which very few are people of color. So we established, under the CBC's leadership and umbrella, the diversity task force. It's called Tech 2020. So I co-chair that effort, Tech 2020, and we're working hard, let me tell you, to push tech industries to address inclusion in a big way. So in May, we launched Tech 2020 in Washington, D.C., encouraging tech companies to create practical diversity plans focusing on people of color and African Americans, and as it relates to inclusion in the tech industry by 2020. As a part of this effort, many of you may have seen Chairman Butterfield, myself, Congressman Jeffries. We participated in a series of meetings here in the Bay Area to look at each company specifically in terms of what they were doing, what they intend to do, and let them know that we're on key committees and key spots in Washington, D.C. that they work with us on each and every day, and so they should at least be open to some of the issues that you all are addressing, because we're going to watch them now, monitor them, and make sure they do the right thing. I've got to say, most of them were very, very open to doing what you're insisting on. Many of them want to do the right thing, but haven't yet done the right thing. And so I'm very encouraged by all of your discussions and by this conference, because you're going to make sure that the correct thing, the correct practices and policies are put into place with these tech companies and bring in stakeholders and nonprofits and tech companies together to address this. That's how it's going to be done. And so just know, from the policy level, being in Washington, D.C., I'm on the Appropriations Committee. And so I have that handle as an appropriator to make sure that we have language in appropriations bills that require some form of inclusion efforts. I mean, we've got to lose our leverage where we have our leverage, We have many members on the Energy and Commerce Committee, and so we have members of Congress, members of our tri-caucus, especially in our Democratic caucus, who are looking at every which way that we can use what power we have. Even within this Tea Party-controlled Congress, we still can do a few things with our great president. We can do a few things to make sure that your goals are reached. I was so pleased that San Francisco, in my own district, have been recognized as a tech hire community. And so we're going to focus, laser focus on San Francisco and Oakland as tech hire communities, which means additional resources and strategies to make sure that our STEM programs and our inclusion programs are recognized and worked on at the highest levels of our government. Finally, I just have to say, with regard to Reverend Jackson, he has done, you can't forget the work he has done in terms of insisting, Rainbow Push, that these companies release their data on hiring and on contracting and on supplier diversity efforts. Rainbow Push and his mother passed, so keep him in your prayers. The funeral will be on Monday. And Reverend Jackson has been such a leader in this, and he's been that wind beneath a lot of our wings. And so just know as you move forward, we have to unify and work together to make sure that the goals of tech inclusion and that your goals all are met. Because again, Vivian, myself, we don't want to see this 5, 15 years from now, 20 years from now, happening again in another industry or even still in the tech sector. So you're setting a new standard. Believe you me, you're setting a new standard. And so I just have applaud you, salute you, and thank you for taking this, because all of you, you don't have to be part of this movement. You could do your own thing. But instead, you understand that in numbers and if we work together, we can break some of these systemic and institutional barriers that have been put into place that are played out now in some of these horrible statistics that we see as it relates to the hiring and to the investment in startup companies and to the opportunities that people of color have with the tech industry. So thank you again. Have a wonderful conference, and it's really good to see everybody.